back to Real Talk, Real Immigration. Today we have a special guest, my good friend Carrie Nguyen, who is also an immigration attorney, and I just decided to bring in a guest so you can have a little bit more information and different perspectives. Even though we're both attorneys, we kind of see things a little bit differently. And so Carrie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you so much, Belinda, for having me here. It's an honor. I'm Carrie Nguyen. I have my own law office of Carrie Nguyen. We've been practicing immigration law, exclusively on immigration law, for over 10 years now. We do family-based and removal defense. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to be focusing on a hot topic that has been on many people's minds, and ours especially, is what is the fallout from the election results? What does that mean for immigration? And so we wanted to take some time today because I think there's a lot of misinformation going around, and just kind of have the perspective of what do immigration attorneys think about what Trump's immigration policies are going to be. So as immigration attorneys, of course, we want the best for our clients, what will help them. And now that we know who the next president is going to be, let's talk about what this presidency could mean for immigration. Both of us were attorneys during the last Trump administration, so we actually have real experience with working under a Trump administration. So we're going to use that experience as kind of a backdrop to what we expect the next 4 years to look like. But first we're going to start with some clips of President Trump and what he's actually said about immigration, and kind of like what our perspective is on that and what that means for immigration for the next 4 years. So we're going to start with the first clip, and we're going to watch, and then we're going to give you our perspective on it. If you have any questions or you have any comments, feel free to leave them in the comments section. And if you have questions, leave questions. We may be able to get back to them in the future, in a future podcast. So we'll go ahead and get started with that.
On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast.
Okay, so we just played a clip for you guys. This was taken from the debates between Trump and Kamala. So these are comments that were made by Trump. You watch the video. Carrie, you can kind of give us a little bit of perspective on what you think about his statement that we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and I'll kind of take the rest after that.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is the kind of language that we are familiar with coming from him. It's very much like this fear tactic of, and he's speaking to a certain group of constituents that really that resonate with that message of immigrants coming over to the United States, taking our jobs. They're nothing but criminals. I think this is definitely kind of that hatred language that we're familiar with, that anti-immigration vocab that we're used to from him. But as an immigration attorney, and actually I myself as an immigrant, there is a process, there is a procedure to come into the United States where you're being vetted. So the fact that illegal immigration, immigrants coming in that are criminals, that is definitely far from the truth, because there is a process for immigrants to come to the United States. There are visas that they have to wait for, sometimes could be up to 15 to 20 years. So it's not like millions of people pouring into the country without any process or procedure. And as far as for mental institutions, insane asylums, also not correct as well. There are medical exams that immigrants have to go through. They vet them for not only security, but also for certain medical inadmissibility as well. So definitely this is not correct.
So I guess I would kind of, because I mean, part of our podcast is we want to be real with people, right? So what do you think about, because I guess my experience, like I can see where he's saying these things because he's talking about basically the last 4 years under the Biden administration that a lot of people have come into the country through different programs or maybe not our usual type of immigration. So I guess what would your response be to that? Because I mean, generally, yes, in order for you to get your residency or get some actual immigration benefit, you are going to be vetted during certain ways. But we have to acknowledge that in the last 4 years, we have seen some kind of different procedures being done at the border. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, and this is a good point. I think it's good to address this. Is there's obviously certain parole programs that happen in the past 4 years from people in certain countries, and so I think the Biden administration also has some responsibility in not having that program. How would I say this? Done in a way that is 100%. Protecting national security as well. And the issues is, for example, it is impossible to vet somebody from Venezuela just because the Venezuelan government doesn't allow that kind of security check as in a lot of other countries that a lot of immigrants come in from. So I do think that the Biden administration has to take some accountability in the way that program was enrolled or being implemented. Because we all, unfortunately, just like anything, right? The system is not perfect, and so there are programs that probably did have some sort of loophole where we wouldn't be able to check their background check. So there are criminals that came into the country, but to the amount that he spoke of is not true. I would say that he highlight, the few cases that you hear on the news, the media make it to sound like everyone's coming from Venezuela has a criminal history, which is not true. But whether we can verify the actual number is impossible to do. Is that what kind of you're referring to?
Yeah, well, I think my biggest problem with this comment is just the fact that it's millions of people. Like, we did not let millions of people who have these type of criminal records or have issues with mental institutions or jails into our country. Now, is there some truth to what he's saying? I think what I'm kind of learning in politics is there's always a sprinkle of truth in what they're saying, right? So I do believe that we are, under a new administration, going to have to deal with some of, like she said, the loopholes and issues that we had with the migration during the last 4 years, right? And so, yes, are there documented cases of immigrants having come in and immediately committed heinous crimes? I think we have to admit that, yes, that's true. But is it millions? Absolutely not. So I think we just have to be careful with the rhetoric that we're believing from people. Somewhere in the middle is the truth. Now, in this case, I would say it's not in the middle because it's definitely not millions. Some of these things are political tactics, right? Like you said, it's about fear, and some of it, comes from real life cases. Are there people out there who have, seen crime increase in their? I think we have to admit that to a certain extent, we have had some issues with the people that we've allowed into this country in terms of not being able to properly vet and not having enough resources to properly vet. Now, our system itself, for you to actually get your residency, there's a lot of vetting in that process. But I do think that this new administration is going to have some work ahead of them to see what they're going to do. But so we'll kind of move on from that. But I do want to give people that tip about politics. It's like usually there's some truth, but both sides like to embellish, what that actual truth is, right? So we just want to be clear. Millions of people from prisons and jails. I don't even think there's millions of people in prisons and jails in all of these countries that have come in. So I think that's a gross overstatement. Is there some truth in terms of us not being able to vet certain countries, and that there are rumors of Venezuela having some tactics of allowing emptying their prisons and doing certain things? There are rumors. I don't know how much it's been actually proven to be true, but I think we have to be aware that these are issues that the next administration is going to have to deal with. All right, right, we're going to go into the next clip, which I think is a really big issue, something that is being talked about a lot, something that could affect a lot of people, and it's actually kind of a scary issue, I think, for us as immigration attorneys. So we're going to play the clip, and this has to do in particular with birthright citizenship.
Want to continue giving automatic birthright citizenship to every child born to an illegal alien, even if they've been on our soil for only a matter of seconds. Hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrant children are made automatic citizens every year because of this crazy policy, and they are all made instantly eligible for every privilege and benefit of American citizenship at a cost of billions of dollars a year. That's what it costs, billions. Back before the Democrat Party went crazy, they also opposed this practice. Harry Reid said, no sane country, quote, no sane country would grant automatic citizenship to the children of illegal immigrants. That's what he said. That's before he went crazy. Under this policy, anyone who breaks into our country and has a child, the very next moment that child would be made a citizen for life. Great. This policy has even created an entire industry of birth tourism, big business, where pregnant mothers travel to America to make their children instant American citizens.
Okay, so we just finished watching a clip on what Trump says about birthright citizenship here in the United States. As far as from an attorney's perspective, and you can kind of jump in, Carrie, I mean, this has always been the case. I mean, it's in the Constitution. It says who's a U.S. citizen. This is nothing new. So it's a little shocking that this would even be something that people are taking seriously, but from what I see, I mean, it does appear that they're taking it seriously. So, I mean, what is your kind of take on that? And I can follow up after that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's absurd. I just don't understand how this would definitely take a constitutional change to take away birthright citizenship, right? Anyone who's born here in the United States is a U.S. citizen by the Constitution. But one thing I do want to address is the tourism industry that he's talking about. I mean, and I've been doing this for a very, very long time. You know, it happens, right? People do come to the United States on a visitor visa, and you know they're pregnant and they do give birth, right? But to say that it's the intention, is the industry. I'm not aware of such things.
Well, and I mean that's an easy fix. I mean, just because somebody has a tourist visa and they show up at our border requesting to be admitted as a tourist, I mean, immigration at the border has the ability to say, no, I don't think you're coming for that reason, and deny them entry. And so to me, I mean, I had actually never heard that before, so I thought that was interesting. Now, the fact that that may happen, I mean, perhaps, but I don't think there's like a huge industry, and I think that's an easy fix. But I think the whole birthright citizenship, at least from what I've researched on it, was that their intent is from day one that Trump enters office, that he may attempt to execute an executive order and interpreting the Constitution in a way that they feel like would restrict birthright citizenship. Now, obviously, that would immediately be challenged. And I think even in a later interview or in different interviews that I've seen, he's gone back and said, well, it may require a constitutional amendment. So I think there is some knowledge on their part that, they're pushing this, which, I mean, should it be that crazy considering, I mean, we did spend a lot of time under the first Trump administration arguing that Obama was not a citizen, which is really interesting to me because, we may have other senators who were not born in the U.S. Who also have a claim to citizenship, maybe right here in the state of Texas, I'm just saying. So this whole issue of birthright citizenship, it's scary. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I was thinking about, and tell me what you think about this, was I don't think that Trump or the Republican Party has really considered how many U.S. citizens serve in our military forces today and over the last 100, 200 years whose parents were not U.S. citizens, who maybe were here illegally. And in fact, we know this is the case because we have a whole program under it called military parole in place for the parents of U.S. citizens who are serving in our U.S. forces to be able to be paroled in and allowed to get their residency legally. And so we actually have hundreds, if not thousands of, and I would say thousands, and many thousands of serving military members who would fall under this rule. So you would basically be gutting a large part of your future military because these people are born here in the United States. They love the United States, not only as much as we do, but I would say even more so in some cases. I mean, they're willing to serve our country. I mean, that's actually very offensive, and I really think it's like we don't think about those things when we say these things. I mean, we have thousands of people serving in our military right now that Trump's rule would basically strip them of their citizenship. Now, I don't think they're trying to go backwards on this interpretation, but moving forward, what does that say, right?
Yeah, and like just with a lot of what you will see in the rest of the podcast, it's like the implementation of it, right? So how's it actually going to look like? I would be shocked if actually this is going to come to place where he's going to try to take away birthright citizenship. But like moving forward, right? Like if he is going to implement that, like, okay, so if a baby is born here, the parent's going to have to show that they're a U.S. citizen. They're going to have to, and then like what if they're legal permanent resident? You know, I mean, it would require one constitutional amendment to just how to implement this. So, and then how many people would be, like Belinda said, would be impacted by this, and the consequences of it. We will be losing a future generation that will pay taxes, that will join the military, that will become very successful business people in the United States. So,
well, and that kind of addresses like the next thing that was said was like they're costing us billions of dollars. Yeah, I mean that's not even taking into account that
taxpayers.
I mean they're going to be future taxpayers, future members of our military, future spouses of U.S. citizens. Like it basically just strips them of everything that they are, and we know that because I mean we see it, you know, in the United States now. I mean there are millions of grown adults that were born to illegal parents in this country, or what they call illegal people in this country, who are very successful members of our society. And so I think, you know, it's very sad that this is where we are at this point in our country. And you're right. I mean, you know, this is a point that, you know, I have been saying once I saw that this was really taking hold and something that they were really like, are you serious? One of the things that's bothered me is that the fact that we would, at the birth of a child, label them illegal. That's really sad. Like, who does that say we are as a country? Like, you're born here, and the minute you're born, we want you to know you're illegal, you're not wanted here, and we're going to deport you. I mean, how does that say for the same voting bloc that said, we don't want you to abort children, but now we want you to deport these children? Yeah. So, I mean, that to me stands in stark contrast to what we are as a nation, and I think it's a lot more offensive than people realize it is. And so it's important to really talk these things fully through. Like, do you really want to begin forcing people to deport babies? Like, you're going to be there at the hospital, you're going to say, I mean, and there, like I said, there's a lot of prominent people in this country who, you know, or people who have businesses, who all of these things that need to look at what their parents' legal status either was at some point when they were born or is now, and realize that, yeah, he's talking to you, like, you know, this means you too. So I mean, I think we need to take seriously what he's saying that he wants to do. Whether that actually will come to be, I mean, I think we would hope not.
Yeah.
And I think the Constitution's pretty clear, but yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah, this is
pretty
definitely one of those proposals that I just don't think will happen. But again, you know, I've definitely been wrong in the past. You know, America is known as like the land of opportunity, right? And so as an immigrant, and I just think like this is how many immigrants are looking at America going forward and be like, there's no way I want to raise my children there. I don't want to go there, right? I have a good friend who's a Canadian immigration attorney, and she's like, we welcome everybody. So like, hey, if you don't want to come to America, Canada will welcome you. And you know, there's other people who's looking at other countries to immigrate to now.
No, Canada's
instead of
starting to
America.
shift too, so I may not want to pick
But
that.
not as bad as the US.
I know.
Yes.
And you know, it's interesting to me that many other countries are dealing with, and even Trump's own advisor, Elon Musk, is so worried about the birth rate in this country and the fact that we're not having children, right? We're not having as many children, right? I mean, seriously. I mean, he's made it a point to say we need to have children, and he's had plenty for us. So what would we be doing to our birth rates? I mean, we would end up like other countries whose own citizens have stopped having as many children, and now they're dealing with a declining birth rate. I mean, that affects so many things within our country that we don't even think about. Social Security, all these things. So when we talk about these are going to be millions of children probably affected, and the fact that we're at the very point of birth taking them out of the system. Not only is that is going to cost us billions of dollars in tax revenue, billions of dollars in Social Security revenue, billions of dollars in just the things that they would provide to our communities. Like, we're actually doing the opposite. We're going to be costing us billions of dollars by doing this. So, and we may end up one day, you know, like the likes of China, who, you know, restricted their birth rate so much that we're going to be begging people to come into the country to come and do the jobs that we don't have enough people to do when we, you know, used the. So, I mean, this is all just a lot bigger than we think it is. So, unfortunately, I do think they're serious about moving this. I don't know how serious they actually think it is and actually happening, but it is something that I think we need to be considering. So we're going to move on to the next clip. That's a lot.
Let's talk about mass deportation, one of your big agenda items. You've talked about prioritizing people who have criminal histories.
Correct.
But is it your plan to deport everyone who is here illegally over the next 4 years?
Well, I think you have to do it. And it's a very tough thing to do. But you have to have, you have rules, regulations, laws. They came in illegally. The people that have been treated very unfairly are the people that have been online for 10 years to come into the country. And we're going to make it very easy for people to come in terms of they have to pass the test. They have to be able to tell you what the Statue of Liberty is. They have to tell you a little bit about our country. They have to love our country. They can't come out of prisons. We don't want people that are in for murder. So we had 11,000 and 13,000 different estimates, 13,099 murderers released into our country over the last 3 years. They're walking down the streets. They're walking next to you and your family, and they're very dangerous.
The 13,000 figure, I think, goes back about 40 years.
No, it doesn't. No,
That
it's within the 3-year
13,000
period. It's during the Biden term. No, that was a fiction that they put that out. This was done by the Border Patrol. It's 13,099, and it's during the Biden period of time. And these are murderers, many of whom murdered more than one person. You don't want those people in this country. Okay,
so the next clip that we just looked at has to do with Donald Trump's talking about mass deportations. Now, one of the things that we've noticed in this new interview that was done post-election is a little bit of a walking back of his claim that he was basically going to deport 11 million people and do mass deportations. And so now he is saying that he is going to focus on criminals first. So what do you kind of think about this whole mass deportation claim and kind of what people should be expecting in this next administration?
Yeah, I think this is kind of interesting because every administration, whether it's Democrat, Republican, has priorities of enforcement, right, or removal, right? So even in the Obama, the Biden administration, there's like different categories of who are the top people we need to remove. Obviously, terrorists to protect national security, criminals to protect public safety. What he's saying is what I think a lot of administration would say, yes, let's deport the criminals, let's deport the people who's going to hurt our community. But to say is a mass deportation program, it's like, I don't know how, again, for me, the issues is always implementation, right?
Right.
So, like,
I mean, it doesn't seem like he knows how they're going to do it either.
Like, it's just like, we just want to deport people.
Right.
and we want to deport criminals, and then you guys see it. They ask like, what about other people? Like he just saying we're just going to deport all of them, kind of situation. So there is no plan on how they're going to do this. I'm thinking it's probably a lot of expedite removal that we will be seeing. Just kind of similar in the past administration. What's your thought on that?
Right. So one of the things they've talked about, the Republican Party has talked about in their plans and in the past, was the expanded use of something called expedited removal. So there is already within our laws something called expedited removal. So if you're caught within, I believe it's like 150 miles of the border, and you're a recent entrant, less than 2 years, you can be removed under an expedited removal. In other words, you're not entitled to see a judge. You basically just the officer has to show and basically find that you meet the standard under the law, and he can sign an order you removed right there at the border. It can happen very quickly. That's why it's called expedited removal. Now, it's never really been used in mass here within the country, but technically it could be. As long as you haven't been here at least 2 years, they could implement this use of the expedited removal orders to be able to do what they would call mass deportations. Now, the biggest problem, like we've talked about, is implementation. Like, you have to have the right amount of staff, and I think the reporter in the interview, if you watch the whole interview, kind of presses him on the fact that you realize that you would need to have all these more officers, all of these judges, all these things to even implement deporting even 1 million immigrants, much less 11 million, right? And so he kind of walks back. I mean, I think the reality is that most immigration attorneys believe that this is really a claim for politics, but I do also think that he is going to implement a lot of these things, and we are going to see pain points. Who they're going to, make an example of, for now they're saying criminals, but I think it's going to be more widespread. You can kind of talk about your experience under the last Trump administration, and I can just follow up with that too, because I think what we did see under the last Trump administration may be different, may not, right?
Yeah, I think for a lot of immigration attorneys, we would expect more ICE raid, more work raids, right? That did happen in the past administration. But I do think that at this upcoming administration, we will see a lot more of that. So we're not talking about people, at the 150 miles border. It's going to be at the ICE raid, the work raids. So I'm expecting to see that.
Under the last Trump administration, what I did see was not a lot of removals. And I'm just going to say that the problem with the last Trump administration is that everybody was a priority. He definitely did try to deliver on this. We're just going to deport everybody, but it doesn't work, because those of us who work within immigration system know that, there are laws in place. So even if you use expedited removal, it's only going to catch, a certain amount of people. There's a lot of people in this country who've been here for a long time who have certain rights that you can't just deport. And so if you throw them into the funnel system of immigration, what you're doing is creating this huge backlog, which what we do know is that, we saw the backlog grow extensively under the Trump administration. When Obama left, the backlog was significantly lower. I'm talking about at least 3 or 4 times what the backlog was under the Obama administration grew under the Trump administration, because there was no priority. If they just, I literally had a lady in East Texas who had gone to drop off her child at school, and on the way back was stopped by DPS, and they called immigration, and immigration picked her up and put her in proceedings. And so that's not a priority. And yes, you're meaning what you said, I'm going to deport everybody, but by the time she got thrown into the system, we're talking about years of litigation. By the way, she was never deported, because there's just no way to actually do this on a wide scale level, especially for those who have been here for a long time. And so the first Trump administration was not very effective in this. And then, we won't even talk about the Biden administration, but we'll just kind of skip over that. And I think a new Trump administration, what we can expect is, one of the things I'm expecting is, they have already done this, and it took them a few years to get revved up under the first administration. They're going to come in guns blazing. And I think it's kind of hard to know exactly what techniques they'll use, but I do think we will see some pain points in immigration.
And I mean, if you talk about like in practice, right? Like what does this actually look like? Where are they going to put all these people, right? Like if he's talking about doing mass deportation,
Texas. That's what they
right?
Our Texas is already offering land.
Like,
but yes,
you're gonna have to at least store them for a couple days before they could get the bus and all of that. So we're talking about a massive resource that currently we don't have right now. We don't have the people to monitor it. We don't have. I mean, we may have the space in Texas, but what about other states, right? Like, how is this gonna look like nationally, not just within Texas?
And so I think in summary, what we can say to this is the idea of mass deportations may appeal to a wide, I mean, obviously does, appeal to a lot of voters, but how that's going to come out in practice, I think is going to be the problem. So I know that we have a lot of dreamers, a lot of current DACA recipients who have a lot of questions regarding what is Trump going to do in this next administration, what's going to happen. So this next clip that we're going to watch has to do with his latest interview and what he said about the Dreamers / DACA recipients in this country.
You raised the point that the logistics are complicated. You said
Sure
it yourself.
they are,
You would
but
need
everything's complicated.
Yeah, you mean you need 24 times more ICE detention capacity just to deport 1 million people per year, not to mention more agents, more judges, more planes. Is it realistic to deport everyone who's
You have
here
no
illegally?
choice. First of all, they're costing us a fortune. But we're starting with the criminals, and we got to do it. And then we're starting with others, and we're going to see how it goes.
Who are the others?
Others are other people outside of criminals. We have convicted murders. We don't mean people that are even on trial. We have people that have murdered numerous people are on our streets and in our farms, and we have to get them out of our country.
What about dreamers, sir? Dreamers who were brought to this country illegally as children. You said once back in 2017, they, quote, shouldn't be very worried about being deported. Should they be worried now?
The dreamers are going to come later, and we have to do something about the dreamers because these are people that have been brought here at a very young age, and many of these are middle-aged people now. They don't even speak the language of their country. And yes, we're going to do something about the dreamers.
What does that mean?
And
what are you going to do?
I will work with the Democrats on a plan, and if we can come up with a plan, but the Democrats have made it very, very difficult to do anything. Republicans are very open to the dreamers. The dreamers, we're talking many years ago, they were brought into this country, many years ago. Some of them are no longer young people, and in many cases, they become successful. They have great jobs. In some cases, they have small businesses. Some cases, they might have large businesses. And we're going to have to do something with them. And
you want them to be able to stay. That's what you're saying?
I do.
Okay.
I want to be able to work something out.
Okay, so y'all have just watched a clip on what Trump's comments were about what to do with DACA / dreamers in this country. I think we've seen kind of a change in tone in terms of what he's saying about people who came into this country as children. Ironic, you know, that we don't want to give them birthright citizenship, and we acknowledge all of the wonderful things that they're doing in our country, but yet, you know, we have a different take on that. So what is your take on his comments in terms of like dreamers, DACA kids, what should they be expecting?
Yeah, definitely I think he's kind of walking back on, I mean, for the first time I'm like, oh, he's empathetic. He actually cares. But I do think, you know, with DACA being still kind of up in the air, pending litigation and everything. So I don't know how much of it as, yes, he could definitely put this in regulations and make it a law where if you are a dreamer and you meet the requirement, you could potentially get your green card, your residency here in the United States. So I don't know how, it seems like he's saying this, but I don't know if this is a priority for the administration. What's your thought on this?
So my thought on this is, I mean, one, I think that people who have a current DACA or people who would qualify under a so-called DREAM Act, I think that this is positive in terms of what they're saying and what he may be signaling to other Republicans, like, hey, this is something that I think should happen. I mean, he has a lot of sway. And we do know that there have been Republican senators and people that have worked in the past together to try to bring some resolution to DACA and DREAM Act. I do think that he is going to make Democrats pay a price for this, right? And so he's going to get some stuff. He's going to be asking for stuff before he wants to move on this DREAM Act or DACA. And so I think there's going to be some strings attached. I certainly hope that this does move forward because it's something that we've needed to resolve in this country for a long time for these kids, now adults. But I do think that we have to acknowledge that we're in legal limbo right now. I mean, the Fifth Circuit is going to rule any day now as to whether DACA is legal or not legal. Some of the very people that he's saying love Dreamers are Republicans, and yet Republican states are the ones leading this charge against this regulation that put DACA into place in the first place. And now I know that their argument is this is illegal, it needs to go to Congress, and that's great, but we haven't seen that yet. So I think that it needs to be a priority for a Trump administration because we are going to see potentially an end to DACA in the near future, and I think DACA people in particular should begin preparing for, what their next step is going to be. Because unfortunately, Trump has already been in office for 4 years, and unfortunately, we didn't get any kind of legislation. And whose fault that is, I'll just say that, both parties have blame on this issue of not resolving the DACA/Dreamers because both parties have been in office and held office, and unfortunately, Obama didn't get it done. He had the first 2 years, but he expended all of his political capital on the Health Care Act, and all we got was DACA. And so, unfortunately, my views on it, hopefully it happens. It's positive what we're seeing and hearing from Trump, and so we'll see.
And again, this could just be for, speaking to future Trump voters. This is him kind of connecting with that because, there are Dreamers who are Trump supporters, right? And so when they hear this message, it's going to be like, yes, like we're glad that he won the election because this is what they want to hear. And so I don't know. Again, like Belinda, as an immigration attorney, I am I'm tired of what DACA has, our clients have gone through. It's been over a decade. There's got to be some resolution for the Dreamers out there. So I do hope that this is one of those promises that actually will come true and it will be beneficial for Dreamers. But I just don't know if this is going to be priority. I think there's, mass deportation is what he's going to focus in on. So we just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and I think, with all these clips that we've shown y'all, that you've been watching, kind of our reaction to them, I will say, in all reality, there's very little information about how all of these things are going to play out, right? I would tell you that, if you're really interested, the Republican Party did put out something called Plan 2025 about what their objectives for immigration will be. We don't have enough time in this video to go over that, but we'll see.
That should be your next podcast.
Yeah, perhaps that'll be our next podcast about going over Plan 2025. Again, one thing that we've learned as immigration attorneys is, it's all good and great for all of us to discuss and talk about all of these things, but I'm going to go back to what I said in our first podcast. It has been almost 30 years since we have had new immigration laws in this country. Both parties have failed us. If anybody should take the blame for us not having, immigration laws that serve our country at this point, it's both parties. They have both failed because all they want to do is place the blame on each other, and nobody actually wants to look at what we need in this country, right? Like, we do need immigrant workers. We do need, population growth. There are a lot of things that we do need in this country, and if Congress could just get it together and put together a new immigration policy that's humane and recognizes, our immigration needs in this country, I think we could finally see some movement in this area instead of just fighting about it and vilifying each other. So thank you, Carrie, for being with us today. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions or requests for what you want to hear from us, leave a comment, leave a question. We may be able to, go over it. Feel free to email us at arroyolawsocial@gmail.com. Be sure to follow us on YouTube and social media. You can look up Arroyo Law Office, and then
And you can follow us at Carrie Legal if you're interested in learning more about what's going on in the next. I really love that topic about Project 2025. I think there's a lot of things to cover there. But again, like Belinda said, a lot of this is just we're guessing, we're estimating what's going to happen. But in practice, as you know, things take a really, really long time to actually implement. So while there may be executive orders that are coming out on the first day of his administration, how it's actually going to work may take years.
Yeah. So if you're in need of an immigration attorney, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to Carrie. She's my good friend. I trust her. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And like I said, follow our podcast. We hope to put out more content that's helpful to you if you're interested in immigration or just interested in what's going on in politics and immigration. Thank you.